All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're kicking things off with a comprehensive overview of Chapter 1, Introduction to Materials Management. We are setting up a deep dive into the fascinating, totally behind-the-scenes flow of physical goods. We're going to unpack the dense, highly structured world of manufacturing and materials management, complete with the core rules, the concepts, and the math that makes it all work. It's this massive ecosystem operating right under our noses, keeping modern society running, yet we hardly ever give it a second thought. But by the end of this, you're going to see the products around you in a completely different light.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to start by defining the actual source of wealth, then look at the operating environment businesses face, map out the supply chain concept, define materials management itself, and finally figure out exactly how we measure success.
Starting with Section 1, the source of wealth. Let's get a little philosophical for a second and think about where value actually starts.
It's a huge question, right? Where does true wealth actually come from? Now, you might be tempted to say it comes from a nation's natural resources. Mineral deposits, rich farmland, sprawling forests. But here's the secret. Those are really only potential sources of wealth. I mean, a pile of iron ore just sitting in the ground isn't wealth until we actually do something with it.
And that's exactly where manufacturing steps in. Manufacturing converts raw materials into wealth by adding value. It's the ultimate transformation process. We create wealth by taking a raw log and turning it into a beautiful dining table. We take that iron ore, turn it into steel, and then mold that steel into a car. At every single stage of this conversion process, we're adding value, making society wealthier, and quite literally raising our standard of living.
Moving to Section 2, the operating environment. Because, let's be real, creating all this wealth doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It happens in a fiercely competitive arena.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how customer expectations break down into two pretty harsh realities. First, you've got your order qualifiers. Think of these as the absolute minimum requirements to even get in the game. If your basic price and quality don't hit the mark, the customer won't even look at you. But just getting considered doesn't mean you win the business, right? That's where the other side comes in, order winners. These are the specific, competitive characteristics, like lightning-fast delivery or an incredibly custom design, that actually persuade the customer to hand over their money. You absolutely have to meet the qualifiers, but you must dominate the winners to survive.
And those expectations directly dictate a company's delivery strategy. It's basically a ladder of lead times depending on what your specific order winners are. If your customer wants unique customization, you use engineer to order, but that means a very long wait time because you're designing it totally from scratch. Step down to make to order, and you wait for the order before building from standard materials, which reduces the way to bid. Assemble to order is kind of like buying a custom PC online. The parts are ready, they just get snapped together when you click buy. And finally, make to stock. The goods are already sitting on a shelf waiting for you. Shortest lead time, which is absolutely crucial if pure speed is your order winner.
Section 3, the supply chain concept. Because here is the crucial realization. No single factory works alone to pull this off. It's an intricate, non-stop dance of supply and demand.
The supply chain breaks down into three distinct zones. First up, physical supply, getting the raw materials from suppliers to your factory doors. Second, manufacturing planning. This is where the magic happens and value is added through production. And finally, physical distribution, moving those finished goods out of the warehouse and into the hands of the actual consumer. Through all three of these phases, we're managing a constant flow of materials, information, and funds.
But, and this is a massive but, there is a dramatic built-in conflict here. Within a traditional company, the departments managing these flows are virtually at war with each other. Look at these conflicting goals. Transportation wants to ship in huge bulk quantities to minimize their per-unit costs, but that forces the company to hold a ton of inventory. Production wants long, uninterrupted manufacturing runs to lower their setup costs, which, again, creates massive stockpiles of inventory. And marketing, they just want every product available instantly for the customer, meaning they want to hold even more inventory. Every department is maximizing its own metrics, but at a devastating cost to the overall company's bottom line.
Part 4. What is materials management? Because obviously somebody has to step in and stop this internal turf war. We need an organizational savior. So here's the formal definition. Materials management is a coordinating function responsible for planning and controlling materials flow to maximize resources and provide the required level of customer service. In plain English, it's the ultimate balancing act. It's the single area of responsibility that balances priority, what the market demands, with capacity, the resources your company actually has.
It coordinates purchasing, production, and distribution so the whole company wins, not just one selfish department.
Now, if you're sitting there wondering if this level of coordination actually moves the needle, just consider this number: $504,000. This is a real mic drop moment from our source text. This is the annual savings one textbook example achieved purely by utilizing effective materials management. Just by coordinating their flow better, they reduced the time their materials spent sitting around as work-in-process inventory from 12 weeks down to just 5 weeks. That single efficiency freed up $500,000 a year. No new sales, just better management.
So the crucial point here is how a tiny operational tweak can just explode your profitability. Let's actually walk through the math. Imagine a company with $1 million in revenue. Currently, direct materials cost $500K, labor is $200K, overhead is $200K. That leaves a gross profit of $100,000. Okay, now apply materials management. You negotiate better flows to reduce material costs by just 10%, saving $50K. You reduce wasted labor time by just 5%, saving $10K. Revenue stays exactly the same at $1 million, but your gross profit jumps to $160,000. A seemingly tiny operational reduction yields a massive 60% boost in overall profit. That is the hidden superpower of this discipline.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, Measuring Supply Chain Success. Because, as the old adage goes, you absolutely cannot manage what you do not measure.
To make sure our materials management is actually working, we've got to track it. Here's the concise breakdown for implementing a real metrics program. You start by establishing the company's overarching goals. Then, clearly define what good performance actually looks like. State the exact mathematical measurement to be used, set the standard to hit, educate your team on how it works, and finally, ensure it's applied consistently. Because modern supply chain success isn't about a one-shot financial win. It's about establishing a constant, measurable rate of improvement over time. Which leads me to a final, pretty provocative thought. We learned earlier about the product lifecycle, how the order winners of today, like a super unique design, will eventually become the basic order qualifiers of tomorrow once your competitors copy you. Market demands are constantly shifting, so I leave you with this question to ponder. If characteristics that win orders today won't win them tomorrow, is your supply chain built to adapt or built to die? It's a fascinating challenge to wrestle with. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope you found this deep dive into materials management as enlightening as I did. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.